This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
I'm looking forward to the conversation today because you are interested in talking about miracles.
Yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about miracles and things just keep on happening. And I'm inclined to say, that was a miracle. I didn't see that coming. And then I remembered in a class that we had, it seemed like so long ago, where you said that, I think you said everything is a miracle or there was no such thing as miracles. So when I was thinking at that moment, when I said, this is miraculous, I wasn't sure whether it was a miracle because I was trying to recall what you said.
Okay. And just because I can go pontificate, but I really like to be able to triangulate in on what the question means rather than just start answering it. So give me some examples of miracles.
I'm struggling because I'm thinking it wasn't a miracle because we do not manifest anything. I understand that. However,
well, then let me change the question. Let me change the question to what do other people consider to be miracles?
Probably things that could never happen in their own, their own exercise of it or their own intention of it. They can't explain it. It's something unexplainable. Mm-hmm. And so when it hit me, I wasn't stuck between 2 points or, that fence that we talk about sometime. I wasn't stuck. I was just, oh, okay. Because some things started showing up that I could explain in terms of intention and spiritual practices and that kind of thing. You can't say what time, but whenever it shows up, like, oh, okay, there it is. But then it's like a miracle because you can't figure out actually how it happened. And it isn't anything that you did to make it happen. So it's hard to explain that to somebody.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of room for mystery in the stuff that's showing up in our life. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite science fiction authors. And I might have mentioned him before, Arthur C. Clarke, who, among other things, wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey and some other rather interesting things. He also, by the way, was the first person to propose communication satellites. He did the arithmetic back in, I think it was the 1940s, and said, if you have a satellite that's at 22,500 miles up, or 22,000 miles up, it'll take exactly 24 hours to orbit the Earth, which means that from the ground it'll look like it's not moving. Mm-hmm. So he's the one who thought that up, and that was the basis of all of our satellite communications technology. And it took several decades before they actually built it. I say this by way of explaining Arthur C. Clarke, very creative, smart guy. And one of my favorite quotes from Arthur C. Clarke is that Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Okay, you take something and you go back far enough in time to where people don't understand the fundamentals behind it, it looks like magic. Okay? And my suspicion is you can swap in the word miracle for magic. Anything that is sufficiently advanced that we don't understand seems like it's going to be a miracle. So either everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that, because when some things were happening, this is my natural inclination. You know this, right? I'm tracking it back. I'm going back. Like when. And I usually kind of bump into when I made the decision or when I, intended. And then who knows, I probably consciously forgot, but subconsciously not, I suppose. So are there miracles or not? When I think about healing, they seem like miracles, but the intent may be really strong in the area. It doesn't have to be with the person. It could be with the physicians. So I'm pretty big on the intent, the energy in the intent. So what do you think about that?
I completely agree with you. And that kind of dovetails in with how a practical prayer works. Practical prayer is actually a mechanism for making miracles happen. Because what we're doing is we're looking at a creative power that's bigger than us, that we don't know how works, but we know how to work. So we're basically setting the intention, inviting something to happen, and then getting out of the way while a power that is way past our pay grade does the actual moving stuff around. It works in so many different areas. It works in all kinds of different areas of our life. I'm currently having lovely experiences where I'll just think about somebody. I'll bring them to mind and say, I really want to talk to them, and then not get around to calling, and they'll call me. And it's been happening a lot lately, enough that it's just a reminder, a nudge. Yes, it is worthwhile to communicate with these people. And oh, by the way, Mr. Arrogant, you could pick up the phone and call them. As I'm watching, I don't need the divine to be my secretary to send those things through. So you can look at that and it's a big happy coincidence. Or you can look at that and you say, there is something much bigger at play than we understand. And that's what shows up as miracles. In the realm of knowledge and understanding, the same thing shows up as intuition. And we describe intuition as knowing something without knowing why you know it. And miracles are things happening without you knowing how they're happening.
Okay. So when you say you don't know how they're happening, but you might know that they're going to happen, or I'm thinking of a specific situation where I was not taking no for an answer, regardless of whatever was being said that was at the table. And I remember the deck was stacked, not in our favor. And I just sat back, and I remember sitting back in the chair, feeling like, this is going to go the way I say it's going. This is, and I had no way of making it happen, except for I felt like I was pulling on every bit of divine energy, which I really actually didn't feel like I was doing that much pulling, because I was so in belief that this was going to be the case. And by anybody else's standard, it was a miracle. I mean, when it worked in our favor, I didn't feel a thing, because I fully expected that this would be.
Yep.
And if I caught myself, and I can't even say I really did, but I caught myself asking, are you is this exactly like, are you missing anything? So it wasn't, are you missing anything? No. So there was a total allowance of what I knew was the only possible good in this situation. And I think afterwards I was extremely tired because I think I had just pulled it whatever. But that was considered a miracle, but I'm not sure I thought it was.
Mm-hmm. And again, either that was a miracle and everything's a miracle, or that wasn't a miracle and nothing's a miracle. So where you come down, which side of that you come down on, doesn't particularly matter. One of the things that we teach people when they're in the advanced classes learning to be a practitioner of practical prayer is, and Ernest Holmes said this, the practitioner looks a fact in the face and knows something better. And the stuff that we're looking at in the world around us is simply the news. That's the report. That's what's coming back in. That's what's already happened that we're able to observe. It gives us an understanding of what's been going on. We don't necessarily know all of the pieces there. And it can be helpful in predicting what might be happening next, but it doesn't define it. We can see something going along in a trajectory. We can hear a particular report of the news or the status or the circumstances and just turn our belief away from that. No, that story that's being told is not the truth. And I've had that happen. People are all worried. They're going to the doctor because they've got they've got a thing, and now they've got the test results, and they're going to get the test results back, and they're all worried about the test results. And I can be present with them and see that they're nervous about the test results, but there's some intuition in me that says test results are coming back clean and healthy. There is not a problem here. There is an affirmation of good unfolding. And I tell them that. And they hear from the doctor, and now the doctor is the second person who tells them, or the lab is the second one who tells them that the results came back healthy, happy, and clean. And it's not like I'm making that happen. There are times when somebody's worried about that, and I don't have that clarity. Oh, no, this is all fine. At which point we go into the process of the prayer. And we employ the 5 to 7 steps in practical prayer, where we turn away from the local circumstance and situation that we're in, and we turn our awareness to that infinite creative power that creates everything. Okay, this is the one that creates galaxies. And is it possible that infinite creative power could create a healthy, happy, harmonious outcome here? Well, yeah, that is possible. And we are part of that creation. So we are all involved in the whole thing. And so if it's possible for the divine to create this goodness, then that's what I'm claiming. I'm opening up to the best possible experience and outcome unfolding. And then I go into a gratitude step and I release it. And there is now a new active entity. And maybe the test results will come back exactly the way we wanted them to. Or maybe there will be a continuation of the story that is something we didn't expect. And in any case, it's okay. There is something unfolding next. And if somebody comes along and labels it as a miracle, they're welcome to do that. There are also I've got somebody in the congregation who's facing the possibility of a hip replacement. And of course, he's concerned because it's a hip replacement, and who wants to get a hip replacement? And my observation is the only person who really wants to get a hip replacement is the person who needs a hip replacement. Because it makes things better, which is why people get hip replacements. So it is about turning away from the fear of the situation. I don't want this to happen because of all of my preconceived notions, my predetermined ideas. And let's see what this possibility unfolds as the highest and best. So maybe it turns out that physical therapy is important and the hip replacement can wait. Or maybe there's some brand new technique for hip replacements, which is much less disruptive than what they thought it was going to be. An infinite universe, limitless possibilities. And every last one of them could be a miracle.
So that's standing in the place of your maturity, your spiritual maturity, because you've been down that road and you know it and you have no doubts because you know how it all works. But then in my case, sometimes I can find the opposition exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
So I just back away because I can't let you take me down. I can't let you exhaust me like that. So
Right.
I'll just remove myself and just let you have your negative. I'll give it a try. I'll give it a really good try until I feel myself just getting exhausted. And I don't know what's going to happen in me, if exhaustion has its way. So I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'll just,
Right.
it's no negative. It's no anger or anything. I just move away from it because it feels too big or it seems too insurmountable. Like the opposing opinion is not moving because sometimes people they don't want to believe something and they won't. So it's like a tug of war and there's no win here. To me, it's not a win. It's an allowing the good to happen. So if it becomes a push-pull, then it's taken out of the realm of allowing good to happen.
Right.
Right.
Right. There's so much nuance in how that happens. If somebody one of those complainy people comes to me and talks about how horrible things are, then I can gently suggest that it's possible for them to maybe turn out being less horrible than they thought. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they go, well, all right, I'm open to that as a possibility because they know that I got this technique. And then sometimes they like double down. It's like, no, it's horrible and it's going to be horrible and I expect it to be horrible. At which point I back away. It's like, okay, it's like we were doing a dance together and now you're the ballerina and you're going to spin yourself around for a while in that negativity. Have at it. I'm going to stand over here and wait for you to tip over. and then we'll continue the dance maybe.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that because I'm thinking, am I being not a bad person, but, do you stay in the foxhole with somebody or just say, look, this is wearing me out. Like, I know it's going to be good. I'm absolutely sure. And we'll talk later. That's, because, yeah.
Yep. I will love you from afar. You go through whatever your angst is and I'll be back. I'll come check on you. We'll do some happy later. Let's take a break and continue this awesome discussion about miracles.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcione.
We're having a wonderful conversation about miracles. That song, I Believe in Miracles, that's the big question. Do you believe in miracles? Because as you believe, so it is done. And if you believe it's not going to work, then it doesn't work. But actually, it's working. It's working to have it not show up the way that you had described because that's what you believe. So that sounds a little bit insidious. It sounds a little bit counterintuitive. But that's the nature of the creative power in the universe. If I am channeling that infinite creative power through my beliefs and I believe that something can't happen, then it's not going to happen. And as you were discussing before the break, if there is somebody who is adamantly believing that something awful is going to happen, they're opening up a channel that infinite creative power is going to fill with whatever horrible thing they say they don't want.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you don't want that horrible experience. Let's measure the dimensions. What color is it that you think you don't want it in? What size and shape? You know, what sort of upholstery should we put on that thing? What's the design look like? Because we're getting ready to dump it off at your house.
It's almost common sense. You know, it's almost logical. And when I started thinking like that, I thought, okay, maybe you're not getting it because it's supposed to be difficult, but not when you put all the pieces together. You know, when you think of God being, all things are possible with God. So that's pretty much the end of the story. You know, all things are possible. Now you can believe it or not believe it. But why would I spend my time not believing? Because that's not in my favor. I'm rolling the dice in my favor as much as possible. And I find it, I'm thinking about a situation that I could look out my window and a person, there were two of them, and they're related, and they had horrible, you know, really health problems. And I would just very gently talk about healing and, you know, it's as you believe and all that business, and bringing in, you know, the God that they understood. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing, the opposition. If there's a stronger word than opposition, that's it. Mm-hmm. Because one person explained to me why death was okay. And they explained it. And I'm thinking, okay, this does not sound cool to me, but my conversation has been shut down. So
was this their death or somebody else's?
No, it was theirs, their own, you know, and they were just, and I kind of understood it, but so I just left it alone. But then there's another person that I can see from my window, and they really have a lot of health problems. And we gently talk about it until the opposition comes. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, it's like, it's not just what you believe, but it's what you want to believe. You know, if you want to believe this, why are you scared to put, you know, just roll the dice one time? That's probably not the best analogy to use, but
try this prayer thing once.
Just pray, you know, one time and see. And I really get it. I really get it. But if it doesn't work, then I'm really depressed and I'm really whatever. I get it. But every time I see you out the window, you're getting worse. So, you know, it's like, and it's like, just try it one more time. But everybody doesn't have that spirit. Do you know what I mean? They don't have that. I can just, if it doesn't work, like I'll think perhaps if it doesn't work, but I'll come back at it again. So if it doesn't work, I'll do it again. And until I have no more chance. You know, my youngest son never, you know, babies crawl backward, then forward, and then they get up and walk. He didn't do any of that. He just sat there. And so I didn't think there was anything wrong with him because I watched his eyes and his face. And it was like a couple of months and he would just rock. And I thought, this little dude is putting it together in his head and he's going to do this. And I just watched. And then one day he was looking at his brother's walking and he just did a little strain thing and he got up and walked. And everybody was like, did you see that? And I'm thinking, nah, I saw that coming. I saw that coming.
Not surprising.
You know, because you can decide that I'm going to do it. And then here's the moment. And I had no doubt that if he fell, he was going to get up again. You know, but we lose that determination somewhere in life, maybe because of so many tragedies, perhaps. I try to be understanding because I don't think that people just don't want to believe because they don't want to believe. Maybe they've seen so much that they're afraid to believe. Maybe.
Yeah, well, it involves faith. It involves faith to believe things that haven't happened yet. Faith, the belief in things unseen, I think is the phrase. That takes some risk. That makes us vulnerable to claim that there's some good that's heading our way and we have no idea why it's going to show up or how it's going to show up. As you're telling a story, I'm thinking about the phrase, you got to crawl before you can walk. Well, not your son. He said, I'm not doing the crawling thing. Let me set the intention for going straight to walk. And it took a while of observation and possibly introspection, whatever it is that an infant is doing as they're about to become a toddler. And stood up and walked. Okay, got this dialed in. And does that make everybody wrong who said that you got to crawl before you can walk? Maybe. Or maybe it just means that there's a different version of the story as well. Most people have to crawl before they can walk.
I
Some
think
do not. Asterisk exception.
Yeah, well, there are probably other, babies that do that, but I really am starting to see people more in a transparent way, I guess, because he's 38 and he is exactly the same about everything.
Yep.
Except you might not see a rock. You'll just sit there and it's cooking up something. Let's just wait. And then bingo, this is what I thought of. And it's like no shock now. It's just that you see it cooking. And so maybe it's the way people are wired. Maybe some people are wired like that. But it feels like the experience of their own failures, not to say that they failed, but their own experience in failure and seeing it in other people. This didn't work. They don't have any frame of reference for the success of what they're hoping for. So that's not it's difficult. So I'm very sensitive to that because I understand that if you've never seen it, then you're afraid, what if it doesn't? And so somebody comes along and says, well, Jesus said it'll be as you believe. That's not going to help you very much when you're in, it can't.
Comparing it to Jesus makes it pretty inaccessible. Well, there's like
then you got
to around an awfully long time about Jesus.
But then you got to go through this. But Jesus wasn't the great exception. Jesus was the great example. And it's for real. But it's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift. So
we have that class coming up in a couple of weeks on to learn to do healing like Jesus, because he told us how to do it. And basically, it was practical prayer, but we're going to put it into the biblical language because it gives you something to hold on to. But as you're talking, the big important thing that we get to do when we're learning to do a practical prayer, when we're learning to invite miracles, is to start small. Mm-hmm. Don't start with somebody who has stage 4 cancer and pray for a miraculous, spontaneous remission. It can happen, but in most people's belief system, that's a lot less attainable than to find a parking space whenever you go to the mall, or to have unexpected money show up as in the form of income, or for, set the intention and the person you're thinking about calls or emails or reaches out or contacts you. So we start small, and then we can understand the nature of miracles, the nature of the co-creative process, and then we can step it up a little bit. And one of my favorite things is, I'm going to ask you, and you probably know the answer. If you wanted to grow cucumbers, do you know what to do?
Yeah. I go to the store and get the seeds. Yeah.
You get cucumber seeds, you plant them, you water them, and everything's good. Okay. You know how to do that without a cucumber seed?
No, I don't.
Okay. That is a miracle. The fact that there are cucumber seeds that you can use whenever you want to grow a cucumber, that's the miracle. And we just take that one for granted. Everything alive in the world around us is here because it was created here somehow. And we take it all for granted and then think about the little tiny bit of icing and decoration on the cake as though it's the part that's the most important. Mm-hmm. Who worries about the sun going out? Would that be bad? Yeah. And it's part of the same creative process. So that's as much of a miracle that the sun is shining as anything else is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
because there's order to things, and things happen in the proper order, I think.
Yep. Which is getting back to the original question. Is everything a miracle or nothing a miracle? And the answer is yes. It just depends on how you look at it.
Yeah. I'm going for everything. No, I can't do that. Never mind. Forget it.
Yeah.
Yes. The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. I go for everything's a miracle. Because just the fact that we are here as part of this infinite intelligence, this limitless love, this divine presence, this unlimited energy, that's a miracle. I'll go with that. And that I then get to choose what I'm going to do or not do with it. Pretty powerful. Let's take another break, and we're going to do a prayer on little miracles. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at BeTheLight.com. That's B-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at BeTheLight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you, and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
This has been a wonderful conversation about miracles and whether everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. And it depends on your perspective. So let's do a prayer. And let's do a prayer about miracles and about inviting miracles. And I'm going to use the term little miracles because it doesn't need to be something big. It doesn't need to be something dramatic. It doesn't need to be something huge. We can invite in a miracle and have it show up in a way that not only brings transformation into our life, but brings a new awareness. Oh, this miraculous something is possible. It is possible for me to be participating in this creative universe in a way that goes beyond what I thought before. So in the prayer, we turn our attention away from the details and the specifics and the story in the world around us. You do that by closing your eyes if you want to. Go to a soft focus, or whatever it is that you do to open your awareness to that infinite creative power, that one divine source that has been creating since the very beginning of time. Regardless of the story that we tell about how creation came into being, all this stuff is here. It came from somewhere. So that somewhere that it came from, we can trace it all back to the Big Bang, or God saying, let there be, or whatever our story is. Everything is that one creative process unfolding and continuing to unfold and continuing to reveal itself in new and fresh and different ways. Everything that exists everywhere is that one divine power and presence revealed in its own particular way. That everything includes me and each one within the sound of my voice. We are engaged in, involved in, participating in this infinite creative process that creates everything. This is a limitless power that creates galaxies, there is certainly no limit to the good that it can bring into our lives. So as we open to the awareness of that possibility, of that potential, as we open a channel for that good to flow into life, it does so. And what I'm inviting now is a little miracle, something important and still believable in the experience of each one listening to this prayer. Transformation is at hand, goodness is at hand, love is unfolding, and there is now a new experience that brings more good into our lives and even greater clarity about the nature of our engagement with this creative process. The miracles are happening, or the good is unfolding and it's not miraculous at all. It is the natural order of things. Whichever way we look at it, this good is coming about for each one listening to this prayer, and it's showing up as good and more good. And the stories we get to tell and the learning that we get to do and the sharing that we get to engage in as we tell the stories about how this process is working in and for and through us. It is all wonderful. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for this good. I'm grateful for the willingness of each one to suspend disbelief to that greatest degree possible and to invite in the miracle. I'm grateful to know that it's already happening. And so with a deep feeling of thanks, I speak this word and I release it into that creative law that creates everything. And I know it is now creating this. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.